Hey, I'm Dr. Christy Taylor, founder of Work Solutions LLC and Work Global News Magazine. And I am so excited to bring you the final edition of our 2025 DiversityWORxKS Round Table series. And today is going to be a great conversation as we focus on leadership for DEIA impact. And I have some excellent guests that are excited to share their expertise. And I look forward to a great conversation. If you haven't had an opportunity to tune in to some of the great discussions that we've had over the course of the last 4 months. I mean, we have focused on everything from women in leadership to building resilient teams. And those conversations have been so great and impactful that we are excited today and sad because this is our final conversation for the 2025 DiversityWORxKS Roundtable year as part of this series. Now, I always open these up and say, hey, this is not a political conversation. We are here to focus on workplace resiliency and building a sense of community. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and kick it off, and we're going to go and do a quick around the room, and we're going to let our first guest introduce herself, Dr. Sarah Ratekin. Sarah, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to move around. And then, as you know, all of our guests, in the end, we do a final plug, and you'll get to learn more about what they have coming up next and things that they have ongoing. So Sarah, kick us off.
Thanks so much, Christy. I'm glad to be here. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Sarah Ratekin, and I'm the founder of both Happiness is Courage, LLC, and The Happiness Haven. And I'm a speaker and researcher who's passionate about showing how gratitude and happiness can transform the way we work and live. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And next we have Hakeem Bourne.
What's up, y'all? My name is Hakeem Bourne Mcfarlane, aka Big Dream Hakeem, and the big dream is to help you live yours. I'm the author of Choose Yourself to Be Chosen. I speak around the world to help people embrace their story, tap into their passion, and contribute their purpose back to humanity. It's about accountability. It's not about being stuck in the consumption loop, and I got your back.
Thank you, Hakeem. And next we have Mr. Thomas Moon. Thomas?
Hello, I'm Thomas Moon. I'm an author. I'm motivational speaker, life coach, advocate, and more. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Looking forward to that conversation. And then we have Jeni. Jeni is not new to our DiversityWORxKS Roundtable series. We had a glorious conversation on building resilient workplaces. And I have to mention that Dr. Sarah, let me go back because that's Sarah. We did the DEI, the Drink, Eat, and Intelligence Package, and she joined us last year. So I felt to mention that. So I have a couple of veterans on with me. So Jeni, you want to quickly reintroduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, hi, Jeni Yelton. I am a strategic coach and consultant, and I am the founder of Purpose Driven Solution and in partnership founder for Kairos Elite Partnership, formerly known as Kairos Executive Programs. We're kind of doing a little reshift because our organization is really more about how we can partner with people and with organizations. So very excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me back.
Yeah, you guys have been busy this last week. I've noticed that, some speaking events and engagements that you've been doing, so I'm excited for you. And last but not least, new to our Roundtable series, but not new to Work Solutions, Isiah Davis. He was featured in Work Global News Magazine, and so we're excited to have him come join us for our panel series. Isiah, introduce yourself to the audience. Isiah, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can still hear. Yes. Transition INC CFO, and I'm focused on helping everyone across the world transition any way we can.
Thank you so much. So we're going to kick this off, and we're going to throw the first question at Sarah because we always focus on building these resilient workplaces. So Sarah, who's focused on happiness, and we've had a bunch of transitions this year. And so we have had some great conversations on building workplace resiliency. So Sarah, your work centers on gratitude and happiness as leaders. And so when we talk about this conversation around DEIA, and we know that there has been pushed to kind of like move in a different direction with DEIA, but we know that diversity in the workplace is still so important. So when we talk about this topic and happiness and leadership in the workplace, how can leaders use these practices to strengthen DEIA efforts and to improve workplace performance?
What I think is so interesting is that in this time and space, these are considered soft skills, but gratitude and happiness are absolutely anything but soft. They're really leadership strategies that help fuel performance and inclusion. Because when leaders are expressing gratitude authentically, they show people that they're valued, not just for what they do, but for who they are. And that recognition, I believe, is absolutely at the foundation of DEIA. It creates belonging in the workplace. And I referenced Bell Hooks just yesterday because she reminds us that belonging is the place of radical openness. So leaders who cultivate gratitude and create that space for joy to exist are sending a clear message to their teams. This is a workplace where it's safe to be your full self. And that safety is what really unlocks innovation, collaboration, all the stuff we're looking for. So gratitude and happiness are not a distraction from performance. They're actually how performance and DEI become inseparable.
You talk a lot on gratitude. Let's get some people to bounce off of her, because I think that in this time and place where we know that DEI is being challenged, right? There's a way for leaders for us to continue to make sure that everybody feels welcome in our spaces and places, right? So she talked about gratitude and just showing people, okay, we appreciate you. We appreciate your input and your ideas and your perspectives. So let's go to Jeni. Let's bounce off of this, and you guys know how we do it.
Appreciate that. It was a couple of things you said, Dr. Sarah, that really resonated with me. One is gratitude, and it's more about recognizing, what you have in front of you and what you can and what other people bring to the table, and recognizing those differences make a difference. And the other thing you said that really stuck with me is that idea that something like happiness and gratitude and joy and purpose is sometimes seen as a soft area, and reality is it's important and it's key. It's not soft. And I feel like, even when anybody talks about emotions or anything, they make it sound like it's a negative thing. And the reality is we are all unique individuals. Nothing. We can be similar. We can have maybe similar ideas, but even our fingerprints are unique. Our tongue prints are unique. We're all unique individuals. We've all had different experiences. And to recognize that and appreciate that in other people, I think is what's important. So I love the work you're doing. I wish there was more gratitude and you have to make it intentional. You have to intentionally look for opportunities. If you look for red, you're always going to see red. So very nice way to start the conversation.
Yeah, I love that idea, because many of us, we're trying to figure out how do we continue to navigate this landscape of focusing on doing the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? But to your point, Jeni, right, there are differences that exist in all of us, no matter how we try to paint this picture. It's not a monolith, right? There are people that exist. Diversity is something that we should be celebrating. Let me go to the next. Hakeem, what are your thoughts? And then we'll throw it out to Thomas and Isiah.
Well, it's hard to be grateful if you're blaming and complaining and playing the victim. Put some gratitude in your attitude. Now, comparison can be the thief of joy or the booster of gratitude. Depends on what you're comparing to. There's people who can't walk, but there's people who can walk but don't walk. And the first thing that shows your gratitude for yourself is your choices that you do for yourself when you buy yourself. It's about what you're consuming. How you going to be grateful when you're eating sugar, liquor, weed, nicotine, caffeine? How you going to be grateful? You're full of toxins. It's about how you treat yourself when you buy yourself, and that's how you show up. That's how you build your confidence, because you see that you love you, and people see that you love you, and you move that way. Then you give other people permission to move that way. But nowadays, we're in a consumption loop seeking justification. Oh, my God, that person's doing that. Oh, my God, why aren't they looking at me? You got to embrace your story. If you're playing that position of running from your story, you ain't never gonna be who your created you to be in the first place.
What I love about what you just said is, when we look at it as it pertains to a workplace, right? How do we as leaders, and I think that's something to come back to and circle back to, is getting people to share their stories, right? So that we in the workplace or as communities don't become this quote unquote monolith, right? That we are still celebrating these diversity pieces and perspectives. But 100% agree, even though I'm still going to drink my Starbucks every day, but 100% agree, right? That it is about how you treat yourself. It is about, and I love what you said about, victimhood, right? Like so the perspective of how do I move myself and my mindset out of this so that I can continue to push forward despite anything. Isiah, what are your thoughts? I'm sorry, Thomas, what are your thoughts? And then we'll go to Isiah.
Let's see, I have nothing right now, but you can move on.
Okay. All right. Anything else to add to that, Thomas?
No, that's it.
All right. And Isiah, what about you? Isiah, you're having some technical difficulties. So you may want to log out and log back in. We're going to keep the conversation going, and we're going to go straight to Hakeem. All right. So, Hakeem, let's go back to what you said. All right. Because you teach people to choose themselves. And let's talk a little bit about that more. And so when we talk about, we're focused, true, we're work solutions, and a lot of our conversations around these topics, they are focused on the individual in the workplace, right? But you are telling people to choose themselves first, and it's about self-care and celebration. So how does that leadership, self-leadership, connect to building inclusive communities, workplaces, and helping others to feel empowered and thrive?
Well, you got to fill up your cup and then pour from an overflow. Mm-hmm. Now, what does that mean? That means the time around your sleep. What are you doing when you by yourself? Are you scrolling, going to sleep late, waking up late, hitting the snooze? First thing you do is drink caffeine and get on the screen. Well, that's messing up your whole day. Now we can tell you don't even believe in yourself. Now, when you get to work, you're going on a half tank. Now, when you get back home from work, guess what your family get? Whatever's left. Now, what is selfish? What's more selfish? Going to sleep on time, waking up on time, balancing your consumption, boosting the gratitude in your attitude, hitting the journal, putting the caffeine down, and then really coming with a full, vibrant to your workplace, or only showing up with what you got for work and never showing up for yourself. See, a lot of people go from what they want to do, then they go to family and work. Then when they get home, they give themselves whatever's left, and then they die slow. You got to fill up your cup and give to yourself first. Then you overflow to your working friends. Then whatever's left goes to what you want to do. You got to reverse it on them. It's choose yourself to be chosen, not choose yourself, not lose yourself and stay frozen. You're trying to, everybody's seeking possessions, achievements, looks, money, status. And that's how you end up in that consumption loop, trying to face the societal norm. And choosing yourself is about embracing who you were supposed to be before the world tried to make you someone you're not.
Can you go a little bit deeper into choose yourself component of that? And I like, because, you know, we get into these discussions about resilient workplaces and spaces, but when you talk about choosing yourself first, what does that look like?
Starts with your sleep, your consumption, exercise. Those three things. You get you a curfew kick out time. This is what I teach people in the Choose Yourself community. It's all up in my book. It's changed hundreds of lives, thousands of lives online. You start with your curfew kick out time. You get home on time. You kick people out your house. You get a digital sunset. Turn your screens off. Stop consuming. Then you get a nighttime routine. Get in bed on time. Read a book. What you doing? Going to sleep late. Eating BS right before you go to sleep. Then when that alarm goes off, get up like you got some purpose. Get up like you got some gratitude. You hitting the snooze 6-7 times, and then you don't even drink water or brush your teeth. You just get caffeine, or you go right to your screens. Get your morning routine. Do something for the mind, something for the body, something for the spirit. Then you get to your screens. Then you get to your kids. Now you got a foundation that you set every single day. Now, who's stronger, your foundation or the people outside of it? But a lot of people don't want to. They'll sacrifice that foundation to try to be something for someone else, and now you half button your life. I ain't want to swear.
So Sarah, I want to bring that to you, and then Isiah, let's do a quick sound check for Isiah. Can we hear you, Isiah?
Sound test.
All right, you sound great. Sarah, I want to bring it to you because we focus so much on gratitude. And as we talk about in this day and age, and as we talk about bringing that gratitude to the office, and then I'm going to bring it over to you, Isiah. Bringing that gratitude to the office, we hear Hakeem talking about the importance of self-care first. And so I really want you to touch on what does that play as part of that happiness and gratitude and what we're bringing into our workplaces and communities.
I love especially what you said about choosing that, Hakeem, choosing that different way of approaching life. We know that we are all oversaturated. We have thousands of connections on dozens of platforms. We have too many inputs into our brain. The human brain is not designed to have more than about 150 decent connections. That's well documented. And yet we're trying to connect to everybody all the time. And so we're all overwhelmed. Our brains are on overdrive. And of course, we're working on fumes. We aren't choosing to pause and take care of the basic needs. And until we do that, we really can't thrive in any kind of real way. If we're lucky, we're just surviving. So Hakeem, keep on preaching it because you're absolutely right.
Thank you.
Your thoughts, Isiah?
And just to bounce off that, filling up the tank before going inside of the workplace, I do think is very important, because any little small thing that, if you were not in a position where you already full going into workplace, and what I mean by that is you're balanced, your mindset is balanced, your thoughts is balanced, your emotions are balanced, in any little small disagreement, and when you're not going into the workplace already full, can maybe result in an individual losing their job or workplace confrontation.
Yeah, I mean, this is what's so important. See, people come into these conversations think, okay, if we're going to be talking about the topic of DEI and workplace inclusion, that we're just going to it's just going to be, well, this is how you can put together a nice DEI program. This is how, this is how you can balance that. No, when we're talking about true resiliency and making this all work and having these conversations around gratitude, happiness, and celebrating diversity, it starts with self and how we look at ourselves and experiences ourselves as leaders. So it's good to have some different perspective, coming in to say like, hey, choose yourself first, right? Because all of that as a leader, whether your leadership is not title. And I think that any of us who have worked in any kind of environment know that, right? Leadership is a characteristic trait. So it can be positional, yes, but I mean, in some kind of way, like I always know, like, hey, even by doing the work that we do with Work Solutions or these diversity work roundtables, all of that stuff is a form of leadership. It's not necessarily by title, right? Sometimes it's positional, but sometimes just the work that we do and how we engage with other people, and knowing how people will look at you and engage with you. That self-care component is going to be so important. I mean, later today, as soon as we get off of here, I'm going to do a salt bath treatment, right? Where I can breathe in some. So that self-care element is so important in cleansing ourselves. Thomas, do you have any comments? Then I'm going to kick it over to Jeni for the last comment.
Yes, the thing about selfishness, I like to say, when you come into work, I just wake up in the morning, coming up with the attitude of confidence that you're not like confidence and selfishness, but you're going in believing in yourself that nothing doesn't stop you, that no one's, even though they may be going through crap that day, you're not gonna let it say, like, your attitude, like where you're going, you're not gonna let that like change you, how your day is gonna go.
That is so right. I mean, I think there's something to be said with that. Thomas, you have the next question, so I want you to make sure you hold your camera up, and I'm going to give Jeni the last comment as it pertains to this, okay? So Thomas kind of wrapped it up there when he said, hey, don't let somebody ruin your day. So we talked about everything from mindset and how the self-care component as leaders, right? To just what do you do when you're dealing with a little bit of adversity? So Jeni, what are your thoughts on all this being said?
Well, first of all, I've changed it from selfish to self-focused. I tell everybody all the time, when you need to be self-focused, because you're your own advocate. And at the end of the day, it's human nature of that with them, what's in it for me. And people kind of push back against that, but that's who we are. We have to see a benefit. We're only going to change our behaviors or do anything different if it somehow benefits us. But the benefit is the piece that I think, Raheem, that you really mentioned is like, what are we gaining from it? What are we putting in? What are we filling into that cup? So when it comes to like development and growth, I really think about where somebody is spending their energy, what they're focused on, what they're working towards to fill up their cup so that they make sure that what they're able to put out actually has value. So they're taking in the things that they need to actually grow. I think it's a great way to think about it. And in the end, when it comes to leadership and in business, if you're solid in your foundation and you feel fulfilled in your life and then you come in and work, that's what your employees see. That's what they focus on. That's what they are inspired by. And they want to live the same way. So yeah, I like that whole idea of that internal. And I real quickly, I met a woman on the beach who told me that because I just felt overwhelmed. And she said, you're like this in life. You're just things are coming in, but everything's pouring out. You need to just stand up, fill it up before you ever give anything to anyone else. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to what you were saying, Hakeem, with regards to that consumption loop, right? Because we're all kind of chasing something, right? But we kind of get caught up in that. And you really are just highlighting the importance of leadership starts with you, right? Leadership starts with you. It starts within, right? And so I'm sure we'll circle back to that several times in the point of this discussion. So let me give it over to Thomas Moon, because Thomas, when we talk about these things and the experiences of what we may be experiencing here in the workplace, I want to make sure that we highlight some of your experiences. And Thomas, you have turned personal adversity into a powerful platform for inspiration, which is why we're so excited for you joining us today. So how can leaders use their own lived experiences, especially struggles, to build empathy and drive inclusion in the workplace?
See, man, was going through struggle myself, being like with a disability. I like have to use a wheelchair or a walker sometimes. So I had many obstacles in my life. But for me, it's that initial step, like trying something, is that what's going to make pretty much a decision. If you don't take that first step, you will never know. It could be the worst thing ever, but it could be the greatest thing ever. You just have to, you gotta go at it as, hey, it's not gonna ruin me if I try it. It may not be the best thing, but I'm gonna at least try and see what happens. Because if you like live in the box, that's all you're gonna get. Whatever's in that box is what you're gonna get.
I mean, that's so true. I'm going to hand this over to Isiah to bounce off of that, because I have something to say to that. Isiah, what are your response?
Just right and showing up every single day to try, even inside the workplace, where it could be a different place every single day. Let's be honest, the workplace changes by hour, changes by day, and you just keeping that mindset, as Mr. Thomas stated, and having that confidence going inside of the workplace, I do think that it instills in the individual a sense of belonging. When they feel confident, I can do it. I can go through the work operations with self-confidence.
Yeah, I wanted to share this based on something Thomas said, and then I'll have you guys jump in. Earlier this week, I was filming a podcast, and I was thinking about my experience this year where I had a role that I thought was going to be a career role, right? So what if you find yourself in a position, right, where you work for an organization and you walk in to work one day and you suddenly do not have a job? It happens all of the time, right? And so with the it happens all of the time, that has helped me to control my emotions with regards to it. But this was a place I care very much about. I still care very much about the people, because we were doing work that impacted the entire world. So when you go in one day and it's like, okay, suddenly I don't have a job, and you find yourself in a situation, here you are a career coach. So here I am, a career coach. And, Thomas's point here was like sharing experiences, right? And so what do I do when I'm running a company that's a career coaching company, but then I've lost my job, right? I did not necessarily want to share that, right? I just wanted to keep talking to people about great resumes and LinkedIn profiles and that. But it was when I went to do a speaking engagement here in the DC area, and I walked. First of all, I was paid to speak, but the registration for everybody was free, and they were literally had people on the wait list. So I knew that it was something that it was needed. It was a resume writing workshop and a LinkedIn workshop. So I went into that event, and I had my notes prepared about, here's what you're going to do to write your resume if you're on the job market, da, da, da. And I looked at the faces of these 20 plus people in the room, and I saw the hurt on their face. People who had lost their jobs, who had lost their careers after being, some people 40 plus years, 20 years. Young people who had just started their careers thinking this is going to be where I am. And instead of reading my canned notes, this is when I said, I am there with you. I have been there with you, right? And I shared my personal experience, and it allowed me to build a connection with those people. And people need to see that. So as leaders in the workplace, when we talk about diversity, one of the things that I'm very good at is getting people to share their stories. This is why these panels are not a monolith. These panels exist with people from different backgrounds and experiences to come in and share their experiences in perspective, right? But I always get a disclaimer, we're not political. People come in there, share their experience, and we focus on workplace resilience because it was in that moment when I actually shared my story that people realized like they're not alone. And then also, as someone who, I like to say the persona of perfectionism, who always likes to look polished in public, that was a moment where it became so real for them because they feel like they can have, this coach is going through it. And I was able to find a job quickly. I will say that, you know, and I know that everybody wasn't blessed to be in that position, but just people hearing your story and connecting with you. So as leaders in the workplace, when we talk about what Thomas just shared about, you know, hey, share, because, you know, you can't, what is that? You can't, none of the opportunities that you miss, right? You can't, I forget to say it, but you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, take the shot, right? Yeah. Because building that connection with people. Because listen, I still use the term DEIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. Because sometimes when we talk about DEIA, we get caught up in gender and race. We forget that the disability community, there are people who need support outside of the context of what we may think of in our head, right? So that's why I make sure I still use the terminology because it's a holistic conversation. So when we talk about, when we go into this, let me throw it out there. I'll throw it out there to you, Hakeem, first. People sharing their stories is inexperience and connecting with one another, and taking that first shot, right? And as leaders, how do we use that and leverage what Thomas talks about to build that sense of community? What are your thoughts on that, Hakeem?
Well, that's what we do with the Choose Yourself community, the CYC, every Tuesday at 10 a.m. EST to grow your mind. All right. Ain't nobody coming to save you, not even your savior, until you prove your faith by changing your behavior. And changing your behavior starts with the mindset. If you're going to sit and play the victim, if you're going to sit in that dark place and not embrace adversity, not embrace the dark days, well, society's going to write your story for you. And they're going to tell you who to be. You got to go back into your story, find out where the power is in adversity, because this is not your mission. This is our Creator's mission. Okay, the journey is subjective. The destiny is objective. Just be most selective with your perspective. Everybody got a story. That's what makes us diverse. So when I lost my brother when I was 16, pulled the plug, played sports, it took me 12 years to get over that anger. I played at 3 different colleges, played pro ball, had 7 knee surgeries, got locked up, battled addiction, pulled myself out. Eventually, I got to that trigger point. And that's the first stage of the Choose Yourself process. When you get done dealing with your own BS, ain't nobody coming. What you going to do? You got to pull yourself out. And when that happens, how you pull yourself out, that gives you your credibility. Now, if you embrace your story, now you start to exuberate your authenticity. Now you give other people the permission to heal in their story. Now you bring in everybody's uniqueness to the group. Now we combine and we can collaborate instead of trying to clash and compete for the same spot, because you got your own thing. I got my own profession. I got my passion. And so now you take your story, take time in your foundation around your sleep to tap into your passion, and your gift will surface. And then you give your gift to others. It's a gift. It's not for you. You give your gift, but your gift comes from story plus passion. And then that contributes to your purpose. And it's all going to be worth it. But if you sit in that victim's mentality, waiting for somebody to come save you, what are we going to do? What's going to happen? You're going to be stuck in the pain. And then everything that you see is going to be a reflection of your perception and your projections. And now if you're angry, you treat people angry, you get angry. If you're playing whatever type of mindset you got, our whole world is a mirror. Chapter 1 of my book, The Mirror's Truth. What you see is what you project. And if you hold on to what people called you, that's exactly what you're going to think you are. And that's what you're going to tell other people to treat you. And so when you're able to embrace your story and move in authenticity, embrace your foundation, take responsibility and accountability for the things that you can control, not worry about the things you can't, that's how all of us build a stronger community and a stronger world and a stronger society for generations to come. And so adversity was put there to see if you really believe in your beliefs. It's on purpose.
I will say to that, I mean, I've found people who have, as we talk about even keeping workplaces resilient, right? I have found people who have really, out of this struggle, have found a new sense of purpose and process. But it goes to your point of like embracing your story. And when we applied it to the everyday workplace, as leaders, again, regardless of titles and positions, and you're trying to figure out, how do I navigate this process of making sure that my workforce or my team or the people around me know that we embrace your story, we embrace inclusivity, we want you to thrive in this workplace. Sometimes it's about sharing your own story. I mean, to a certain extent, I think that we all have these personal mantras and stories that we live by as leaders that we can share with our team to help motivate, but also for them to see that personal side. Because again, like I said, I had my prepared speech, but when I went in there and I'm like, these people are hurting, these people need like a real story, right? Me sharing that, and it's like, hey, I'm with you. I've been there, done that, not once, but twice this year. So, navigating it, how do you navigate that? Somebody who's done it and not just talking to you about it. Sarah, let me get some perspective from you, and then Jeni will end with you, and we'll move on to let me get some perspective from Jeni, and then Sarah, because Jeni has the next question. Okay.
Just real quick, I actually, Thomas, I applaud the idea of taking those steps, because I think that's the piece, is like making a decision, having an attitude that you're going to have to try. Because you could sit kind of back to Hakeem's of like sitting kind of that, I can't do anything about it, but there are always things you can do. Maybe not exactly what everybody else says you should do, or maybe even what you want to do, but there's always steps that you could take. And making those turns, that's a risk. And that's always, you can learn something from it. I love what you said on that. And that really kind of aligns to Hakeem, what you said too, because really when you own a story, you have to live it. I could tell a story about resiliency, but if I haven't had that experience, then it's not authentic. It's not real. So at some point you have to be able to speak and really connect with people and share and lead and coach. You have to admit and be vulnerable, like Dr. Christie, like you were, of, hey, I've been here. Because otherwise you're telling me how to do something and you haven't experienced it. It's hard for me to be able to feel you are connected to me. You may have great advice, but if you haven't at least like had enough experience of something similar, it doesn't have to be exact, but something similar, there has to be something you overcame to learn from. That's what learning's all about. So.
Yeah, and I would say in the 10 years I've run my coaching practice, of course I've had experiences, right? But it was just never in this way, right? I didn't have the coaching practice where I start off like, hey, I walked into work one day. So sure, had to go through the job search process and, followed all the protocols and stuff and been without a job, been on it. But that was my first time this year, not once, but twice. First time going into an environment where it was like, hey, something that you thought and I think that what most people are finding as they make these transitions is like, and what I'm seeing is, it's like, what am I going to do next, right? Here's the thing about these conversations about DEI and, DEIA, guys. When we have these conversations, again, there is so much of this, there's so many layers to peel back from it. Where does it start with us as leaders? Where does it start with how we motivate our teams, how we see ourselves? What are we doing to share our stories, to make sure that folks within our environments don't feel like they have to exist within a monolith? What are we doing to engage people and helping people to stay grounded as we, and so you can call it many different things, right? You can say, well, we rephrase it and we've called it our inclusion and belonging committee, whatever. I don't care what you call it. But the framework remains the same in terms of people need to be celebrated, and in a workplace, ideas and perspectives need to be celebrated. And we need to just toe the line of, there is a difference between professionalism in the workplace, and sometimes people can't overshare, right? You can't. So don't think that when we talk about sharing your story, it's different when you're an author or coach. You can be a little bit more vulnerable, but when you're talking about sharing your story, there are things even in a corporate environment as leaders that there are stories and things that you can share to a certain extent where it can help to motivate your team or get your team to see some perspective. Sarah, let me get your thoughts on this, and then we're going to move the conversation forward.
There's this really weird belief that whether you're a parent, a politician, or a CEO, you're somehow supposed to be perfect. And I think that is the biggest damaging belief that people embrace when they come into these roles, because we're not. And to speak about authenticity, when I see somebody telling a story about their adversity that is absolutely unbelievable, I don't know if it was ChatGPT or something that they got off of a cool podcast, but it doesn't resonate with anybody. I was working with a team during the pandemic who had been they had to go to the office because they were actually factory lab workers, and their CEO would come on for these like motivational speeches from his home office in his mansion in the fancy houses, right? And the messages he was sending were actually pretty good, but nobody could hear him. Nobody could hear him because they didn't believe that he actually had a clue what their lived experience was. I know he did, but he wasn't able to bridge that gap to have that honest conversation. Yeah, you don't want to trauma dump on people. That's not vulnerability,
Right.
but you can definitely have an honest conversation about a real challenge that you have faced. And I think that shows an actual leadership, because that shows you can make the decisions, you can problem solve, you can think your way through it. And we know that resilience is different than grit. Grit is just suffering through it and hoping you survive the experience. Resilience is navigating through all of the shenanigans and coming through the other side, able to continue on with a life that is actually still really full and beautiful and not filled with scar tissue and misery.
Man, I'm so glad that you said that, because it was in the middle of teaching about resilience one day when I realized, I'm like, why do we tell people that you got to keep running into the wall over and over and over, and then that makes your head harder, and then that is when you that's when you become suddenly resilient, right? And I'm looking at this like, no, like resilience comes from experience, right? And people, that's that show Undercover Boss, where the bosses go in and they really understand like the perspective of like the people that are working for them, and they can see like, and then they start to kind of realize their own stories and experiences that they could have shared, or maybe they got so high on the mountaintop, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I forgot where I came from too, right? And so, I think again, all we're saying here is that the points I've taken from our discussion today is that, when you talk about continuing this trajectory of making sure that we have resilient and inclusive workplaces, one, it starts with leadership accountability, right? It doesn't mean that you have to be overly vulnerable, but people want to know real stories about your experiences, and showing a bit of gratitude for the diverse perspectives that you have coming into your workplace. So again, it's a different, to me, it's really the same approach, but now we're acknowledging more of the pieces of those operational aspects of what is it going to take to make sure folks know that we're all included in this environment. Jeni, I'm going to get to you, and then we're going to keep these conversations going, because
if I could,
go ahead, Hakeem.
On resiliency, I believe it comes from preventative action. And you talk about experience. You put yourself in situations where you develop the characteristics and the mindset to be able to bounce back to your faith, to your confidence, which comes in the foundation. If you're not doing the work and you go through something, you're going to be stuck in it. But if you know you got the systems in place to be able to bounce back, then you can bounce back in your time that's allotted for your growth. And you was talking about motivational speakers that don't really resemble what they say. Well, there's an abundance of people who are preachers, trainers, coaches, doctors, and the only thing we can evaluate them on, if they were doing what they say in their past, is their physique. Until we develop my app is going to allow us to evaluate people off of their choices. And then it's a lifestyle alignment. How much do you sleep? How much do you exercise? What do you eat? And how much do you stand? All those things we'll be able to evaluate from the app. But everybody can show up and be like, I got a nice suit, I can talk well. But if I see your choices and your faith showing in your physique, and you're trying to tell me how to exercise, you're trying to tell me how to be healthy, and I can tell you don't do it. Well, now there's some dissonance where I'm like, how, if you don't believe in you, if you're a dentist with no teeth, why should I go to you and get my teeth clean?
Yeah. Good point. That's a good point. Let's keep this conversation going. Jeni, your work with executive coaches often, and Hakeem talks about, hey, you basically need to lead by example, right? And you've been with us in our conversation, Jeni, where we've talked about building these workplace environment. And so I want to talk a little bit about your work with executive coaching and it focus on leadership growth. And this conversation today has been so dynamic, so many different perspectives. What specific leadership development practices do you believe are essential for embedding DEIA into an organizational culture? But I'm also expanding that to say community, right? How do we build community, right?
Well, actually, you were just talking about it right right before about that awareness. And so what I actually focus on with leaders is choosing intentional awareness and exposure to other things, because to kind of Sarah's point too, we are exposed to certain things, we learn certain things, and we choose that. At some point we have to intentionally choose to expose ourselves to different thoughts and different mindsets. So what I do when I'm working with leaders, because we like to have people that are like us, and we feel like our skills, nobody's perfect, but we feel like our skills are the ones that are being successful because they made us successful, that sometimes we discount the skills that other people bring to the table because they aren't ours. And so what I really focus on managers and leaders with is just that awareness of what other people have, and then how can they utilize those and build on those strengths and those gifts and those skills for themselves and others within the organization and within the culture. And then create environments that allow that authentic conversation, but expose the rest of the team to things purposely. It's an intentional action. You have to intentionally go to where you may not be comfortable going, because you're only going to know if you. Oh my gosh, I almost rhymed. Hakeem, you're God. I was like, if you're only going to know if you go, like, but that's that you don't have the awareness if you don't have never experienced it. So, even little things like, celebrate, do some research, but the biggest thing is making it very intentional. It can't just be, oh, look, I hired a whole bunch of people. I've got all these women, but if it's only the guys going out to lunch together and you're only doing golf as the activity, then you're leaving out maybe some people, and that's people and abilities, everything else. You have to always be conscious of that, and being conscious in the decisions you make as a leader, the choices you make, who you put on projects. That's what I try to create, is the awareness around it. Not about placement, it's about awareness.
I don't know what you said there, because I want to talk about awareness. I might have said this the last, like, it doesn't mean that it's Black History Month and everybody's showing up in a dashiki, right? Like, that is not what we mean by awareness, right? It does not, that's not what we mean. And I remember that show, Everybody Hates Chris, where the teacher came to school wearing a dashiki and I'm like, girl, it didn't take all that. So I think that and that's why we have these discussions, because we focus on centeredness and what we can do realistically in the workplace. And I mean, to that point, because how many times have I worked but I guess I'm so used to it, working in environments where they're all guys and they're like, well, we're going to go to play golf. And I'm like, well, I'm going to just sit on this golf cart and drink a bottle of wine or something, a little whatever. And just but every environment is different. But I will say, those guys always make sure I was taken care of, especially because I was often the only woman on the team, right? But those environments I've worked in, but they were even intentional about how they engaged with me. I always say, hey, you good to go? You cool? And so I think, to your point, Jeni, when we are making those decisions, it's not about being so far like, well, I gotta wear a dashiki during Black History Month. Like, it is not that. It is not that. Right? Because if you're not engaging with me every day, if you're not trying to just include me as part of the team every day, or, and making those little small steps to just make us all feel included and part of the team on a daily basis, then doing it on a special month or day, it's Women's History Month. So we're going to just talk about women all month long. Like, no, that's not going to solve the problem. You could have just been including us as part of the team in the beginning, right? So being intentional about how we make decisions as leaders, that is so important. So quick sound check, Isiah, can you hear us?
Sound check.
All right, good. So what are your response to Jeni in this conversation?
Yes, just with intent, as everyone have kind of fulfilled that it cannot just be showing up in dashikis when it comes to DEI and things like that. And just the postpartum to it, it has to be real. It has to be inclusive. And in the workplace, celebrating everyone, even when going on company outings, everyone, we might have a group of individuals who can relate to golf, but this group might can relate to pickleball. So let's just spread the intent so we can spread the diversity around and more so be engaged in everything that everybody can be a part of.
Yeah. I mean, because I might not know pickleball, but I might be open to learning it, right? You know what I mean? So I guess people can say the same thing around golf, but golf is so cliche, right? Everybody goes play golf. So like maybe we do a different activity where everybody can learn and be a part of the process and grow and engage. Thomas, do you have any perspective that you would like to share on this topic?
See, with a disability, a lot of people, they don't know about disability because they don't have a disability themselves or a family member or friend, so they're not like in that world. But like what you guys were saying is like doing events or activities that include everyone, whether disability, black, white, green, yellow, it don't matter. But if you do things that you're learning about, maybe how someone with a disability can play golf or do pickleball, whatever it is, that's how you're gonna learn and just make the future better. So you're involving everyone and you don't have to leave anyone out. But it takes that initial inclusion process to learn like everyone and how things could be done in the future.
Absolutely love that. Because again, we often center these conversations around gender or racial context. And it's so important to include that consideration in it. And I like the ideology that you mentioned, like in that process of saying we're going to do something new, we're going to have some different perspectives. We can all learn something new. We have to have those intentional discussions. Okay. Any other perspective to add to that? Hakeem and then Sarah?
Yeah. Isn't celebrating Black history in February similar to hiring Black people for the DEIA initiative? Because
So,
to me, it's like, oh, here's your
yeah.
1 month, celebrate Black history. Oh, I gotta have this many people to be diverse, so I'm only hiring for that. Even if they don't reach the qualifications of what we're saying, we have to hire them for a reason. We have to celebrate for this reason. My thing is, I don't do pop culture. I don't do current events. I don't watch the news. I don't vote. I don't do religion. I don't do none of that man-made nothing. Because if you are able to embrace who you are, then you are able to move through the world in God's purpose. Now, we're talking about 100 years ago, 200 years ago, none of that was there. I mean, it probably was in different versions, but you're going back to when beginning of time, the natural state. That's where we really find our true purity. Now we got structures and we got corporate and we got the economy and we got politics keeping us, trying to hold us and, oh, add this, do this, go over here. You got to chase your promotion. Oh, you want this? You need a raise? Chase this money. Get this addiction. Go ahead. Calm down. Break free of all of it. You're not about to evaluate me off of something externally. So if that does happen, then, and I fit the curriculum, I hope it's based off of my choices, which show in my mindset, my emotional awareness, my physique, and how I treat other people.
All right. So what do we say to that? Because a lot of this is mindset. Now, as a historian, I can say that there is some historical aspects to celebrating Black history, right? But I do think that is different from how you may look at hiring processes or other practices. Okay. Sarah, what are your thoughts?
I think one of the challenges we're facing with a lot of this work is it is change, and change is hard. It's scary. It's the unknown. And for me, this is a really big piece of why I say happiness is courage. When we approach that change and that fear-based space with just trying to bear down and manage through it, we're tapping into that anxiety-based strength, that adrenaline-based strength, and that is a source of immediate energy, but it's not sustainable in a way that's good for us, body, mind, or spirit. When I think about approaching those spaces with hope and optimism and curiosity, that is far more sustainable for the long term. And the changes we're talking about aren't something where you can just flip a switch. We're not saying take your annual outing from a golf tournament to a pickleball tournament. We're saying change the way you approach, the way you think about this stuff, the intentionality around all of this. That's a paradigm shift. That takes some sustained effort. And if you're basing that effort on adrenaline, fear, panic, anger, good luck. You're going to have a heart attack, and then somebody else is going to have your job trying to figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, I think that goes back to what Hakeem was saying was, you know, it is a mindset shift, right? And that is a process of how we're looking at things and viewing ourselves, or even the sense of the community that we are building, to ensure that we are fostering environments where people can thrive. I mean, I wish the world was that I could simply overcome the issues of the world with my positive mindset, but in the reality, there are still so many systemic and systematic things that are in place, that we have to work to overcome. But one way we can do that is just as leaders, when we're in position, right, being intentional about how we think, how we do things, and how we approach processes. Isiah, because really, you know what, guys, the change starts with one person at a time. When you're a leader and you're in position, you can make those decisions about how you want to move things forward within the team and community that you have to move us to the next step. And change itself is not an easy process, as you guys know. Tommy, Isiah, you describe yourself as a social architect, and we've had an opportunity to talk before. And you talk a lot, and even when we did the interview for Work Global News Magazine, you talk a lot about using systems thinking, right? And so how can systems thinking help leaders? And this is actually a good segue into what we just talked about, because when we talk about dealing with those systemic and systematic issues that exist, right, they cannot simply be overcome with mindset, but as leaders, we can build intent. When you talk about this systems thinking process, how can systems thinking help leaders to close equity gaps and create sustainable, scalable DEIA impact, or just impact?
Yes, because when I think of DEIA in the workplace, it cannot just be on the posters. It can't just be on the website. It has to show up somewhere, either in the systems, hiring system, pay and promotion, the accountability system, because let's be real, there should be accountability system in the workplace. DEIA should show up all across those interfaces that I just named. The reason is because when there's accountability, people feel as if there's heard. When there's feedback, people feel as if it's something to build off of. And as the workplace changes, as workplace changes, we want to have everyone feel a sense of inclusiveness. And the only way to do that is if the day-to-day operating systems have that already embedded. And that's how I think that systems, when we talk about DEIA, that's where systems play a part, because if you're not implementing it, then it's just talk. We can talk about going out and scoring 30 points on the basketball court all day long, but until you actually go out and you implement that into your game, then you're not going to score 30 points. So in an organizational aspect, until leaders implement DEIA into the systematics, not just for a time, not just for a year while it's all popular, but long-term hard implementation, that's where the systems comes in. That's where through the systems you reflect the operational outcome.
Yeah, so I'm going to look at this and frame it in a different way, right? So I think that there's so much discussion that we've had around DEI in the where we're moving forward to in the future. There are so many discussions that we have had around DEIA in the effects of context of race, gender, because that is still an issue. You know what I mean? We can't I'm not going to just blank and it's going to go away. Just because you write it out of history doesn't make it go away. All right. But what I think that when we talk about DEIA from the aspects of building an organizational culture, we're going to have to move differently, right? Because this stuff is shifting and changing. One of the things I love that we do in the military is that we have blind boards. So you won't even know my name. You're not going to know anything about me, right? When you get that board and it's up for promotion, you're going to have this, I'm going to be up against everybody else, and it's going to be my record, all right? That is, you got a diversity of people in the pool. It's equity because it's a blind record, right? People that are going in there judge, you don't see my name, you don't see my gender, you don't see anything about me. What you see is my record. And that is true equity. That is true equity and promotion, because they know emotions involved in their process. You're either going to promote this person or it's not. All right. And then also, again, it's not saying anything about my disability or anything about that, but every workplace is not going to be like that. So what do we do as leaders? And again, it's about intent. What do we do as leaders to continue to drive this discussion to make sure that people have opportunity? There's a level of engagement. Thomas, do you have any feedback?
See, what I think kind of what Hakeem said earlier about like Black History Month, there's Disability Month, there's all these awareness months, but a lot of people, they focus on like this month is for this. They don't think about the other months of the year as being that kind of month. So like February could be Disability Month, but what about March, April, June, July, everything else?
Oh,
Are
true.
you just in ignore disability stuff the rest of the year? Or you done like spread awareness throughout the year, no matter if it's March, June, December, when it is?
Yeah, I 100% agree. So I'm totally okay with going into my workplace and we either celebrating everybody or we celebrating nobody, right? And those months are reserved for acknowledging on your personal space, time, and level. I'm okay with that, because to your point, if you're not driving the conversation the whole year around these topics, and you stopping to wear a T-shirt this month, is not going to change anything, right? We should be intentional about what we're doing throughout the year to make people feel included in these processes. We'll go Hakeem, Jeni, and then Sarah.
Hey, I love what you said about that blind equity, because that's what the app is. We can evaluate your dependability based off of your choices you do for yourself, not your resume, not how much certificates you got, how much money you got, how you treat yourself. That's what I'm trying to figure out. How can we evaluate how someone treats themselves in solitude? You can go out and talk all you want, but you might be eating BS and watching swiping right and paying for all kinds of stuff that's not even in your budget. And now you want to come into the workplace and try to teach us how to do something. And that's what a lot of things we can't identify unless we look at how someone acts under stress, love, excitement, or pressure. That's when the character comes out. But by then it's too late. So we done hired somebody that now can't even control their actions. So to be able to evaluate how they are, who they are, it's about what you do for yourself when you by yourself. And that's the important part of embracing everything all the time. And my job and my purpose is to get people to understand that what you have right now is qualified regardless what month it is.
Yeah, let me make a point here. Marcel Rivers, she just made a great comment. And girl, I was trying to highlight your comment and accidentally removed you from the chat. I apologize. But Marcel was showing you some love. So Marcel, I do not know how to bring you in. My assistant is not here today, so I'm having to work the chat myself. But Marcel said just gave you some love, Hakeem, from Houston, Texas. So sorry about that, Marcel. Yeah, thank you.
That's my guy, Marcel. Yeah, appreciate you.
Oh, Marcel. So Marcel, I was not trying to remove you from the chat. I was trying to highlight the chat. It did. I accidentally removed you. So I apologize for that. But I'm glad people in the chat showing you love, because it's 100% again what we how we treat ourselves, how we engage, how we connect with others. And again, I love what you said, Thomas and Hakeem. Jeni, what are your thoughts?
I just want to give a real quick one. After spending most of my career in HR, Isiah, it is about the processes and the systems that are in place, and you don't realize there's hidden biases and things, and just recognizing that and pulling them out, and kind of to Dr. Christie's point, trying to find wherever you can to just make it about what people bring. But you got to make sure that there's a pool to pull from in that space. So there's two pieces of it, right? And have that the systems in place that you recognize and honor, back to that awareness that there are differences. And I've always thought about those different months as that this is an opportunity for me to learn. And I tell people all the time, I don't want you to know what it feels like to feel bad. I'm with Dr. Sarah. Focus on the positive. I want you to see the positive things I bring. I want you to see the positive things that I can bring to the table. And so I think that's the important thing. It's not about using negative emotions to create it's just creating awareness and understanding of it and having the systems in place to do that. So that's great, Isiah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and before, I started doing these DEI round tables. We're going a little bit over, and I like that because it means this discussion is being really good, right? I started doing these round tables based on the book. The framework I have is the RBT DEIA framework, which I know to come back around at some point. Even now, and I got prepared to present on it this year, and then found out like, hey, it's like I got to change some of the stuff, but I'm not changing it. It's still called, because to Hakeem's point, I look at how leaders, this concept of mindset, right? REBT is rationally motivated behavior. It's a cognitive model, right? How do we use this quote unquote mindset framework to actually change organizations? And then when we talk about DEI itself, it is a difficult conversation. DEIA are difficult conversations. There's a lot of emotions involved in those. But if you know these frameworks for managing and leading change, if you can move through a conversation around that is so emotional and get people to shift in their, I'm not saying you're going to shift people's mindset, because I don't think that's what the workplace is for, but you can have policies and things in place through the process of decatastrophization in the workplace from an HR perspective, to Jeni's point, where it's like, this is a standard that we set, right? So even if you want to work here, this is a standard that we live by, and these are the policies that we go by, right? And this is how we're going to move our organization forward. Now, you can go, if you don't like what we do here, then just go work somewhere else. Very simple, right? But I don't think that the workplace is in the framework. You might, just by association change somebody's mindset, but this is why workplaces have to be intentional, because we're not in the business of necessarily changing mindset, but we do cultivate environments where everybody can feel like they're thriving. And if you look at our organizational culture and you find that it's not necessarily for you, then you need to move on, right? Or we might have to move you. Okay.
Or they can implement the 12-week Choose Yourself Authenticity Program.
All right, Sarah.
I also think when we talk about systems thinking, what we often forget is that systems don't always work really well, right? And when people are acting in a performative way rather than understanding the underpinnings of why things like focus months matter, then you start to see really big bottlenecks in those systems. And so if you do something over on one side of the system that messes up the energy current, you're not going to get the results that you were expecting. You might get some really catastrophic results as a result of that. So I would like to see leaders really step back out of the weeds and have a better understanding of like, what is systems theory and how do the systems in their place of work today, and how could they be improved so that those accidental explosions and misfires aren't happening within their culture.
It's so important. And that's why I say like a framework, like, I base my framework kind of in alignment with Carter's eight steps to approaches to management, right? But it has to be a systems in place, because you, as a leader, you have to understand how to navigate change from bottom up, top down, right? What flows from the bottom up, how does it create? I'm actually putting together a training right now in terms of like bottom up conflict management. What does that look like, and how leaders end up putting out fires at the top, but then also that trickle down from the bottom, from top down, the trickle down effect. How do we lead and manage change? And these discussions are about managing and navigating change in the workplace, and being able to have those difficult conversations. So again, none of this is about being extreme one way or the other or over the top. It's just about finding that middle ground. Because think about it from a HR perspective, Jeni, you know that that's not an easy road to navigate. To your point, you're balancing law, you're balancing compliance, you're balancing all these things. So it's easy to just have a bunch of conversation that sounds real superficial, and we're just throwing stuff off the top of our head. But we're coming in with expertise here, saying like, this process is not easy. It is you have to have systems and structure and work. To Hakeem's point and Thomas' point, you start with yourself. You start with accepting and embrace. That has been a wonderful conversation. We went a little bit over, and I always love that, because it means that it was a natural flow. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a quick around the room, 1 minute, y'all, 1 minute each. And we're going to start with Sarah, then we'll go to Hakeem, but everybody do their plug. We want to know, and I'll have your, because you see me trying to navigate without the beautiful Jules here to help me. Did not mean to ban you, Marcel, but trying to, I want you guys to share, what do you have, your final thoughts? What do you have coming up next? Where people can find you? And as we do that, I will drop your information in the chat for our readers to be able to connect with you. So Sarah, go ahead.
Awesome. I love that these conversations are still happening, even if we have to kind of shift how we're explaining them to people. So I'm actually shifting my focus a little because I see that the isolation and stress that we're all dealing with is killing us at work and beyond. So I've created the Happiness Haven, which is my answer to that. And it's a space where leaders and people can learn to bring gratitude, connection, genuine appreciation back into our lives. And you can find us at thehappinesshaven.org.
Looking forward. You got any big events coming up, Sarah?
Oh, always, always. You can find it on my social media, though. Teaser, teaser.
All right, Hakeem, what do you have coming up?
Yo, what's up, y'all? You can tap in on every social media, Big Dream Hakeem. I meet every Tuesday with the CYC, the Choose Yourself Community for Accountability and Motivation. So you can tap into that. I'll be in North Carolina, October 4th, St. Louis, November 15th. Got a tour coming next year. Got my book, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, called Choose Yourself to Be Chosen. Got some courses coming out, and it's a 12-book series. And understand this. If you make a deal with the fool won't show up as the fool because you won't follow through. It might show up as sugar, liquor, nicotine, porn, weed, pills. It might show up as a snooze button. Watch your dreams get killed. It might show up as self-sabotage or self-destruction, because whenever God gives you something good, you corrupt it and abruptly interrupt it, seeking a victim's mentality by disrupting your production. But those weren't the instructions you constructed. And if you need help embracing your authenticity, you can tap in with me. I got your back. Let's get it.
All right, and your book, your book, Choose Yourself. Can they go right to the site, chooseyourself.info?
Yep, they can go to that.
All right.
Yep, Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Thank you for having me.
All right, we got you. All right, and Thomas, where find you?
I'll give you a little bit of story because I kind of mentioned it, but not a whole lot. Because I was born with a disability. I used to walk in the past, and when I went to college, I had to get in a wheelchair, and my muscles got weaker. But also, I went to foster care system. I was adopted about 11 to 12 by the Mood family, and that day changed my life because most of my life before and even after, a lot of people thought they said I was stupid, would go nowhere in life, and I chose to basically not listen to all the naysayers and make something big out of myself, which is what I did. I chose to climb Success Mountain to show people that, hey, these naysayers, Debbie Downers, they were so wrong. So, like, I went to college, I graduated, I started my own businesses, I moved out on my own, and just keep climbing Success Mountain, and I'm not done until I'm on my deathbed. That's the way I look at it. But as I said, I'm a motivational speaker, life coach, advocate, and more. And if you want to find out more, you can go to www.disabilityspeaker.org. You can also visit my YouTube channel and subscribe. It's under TJ Wheelchair. I don't know why I chose that name, but that's what happened. So that, and also on my website, it's also on Amazon, which the link on my website goes directly to Amazon. But you can get my book, which is called The Squeaky Witch Wheelchair. It's about the disability community, but it's also for anyone, disability or not, like this. It's to show people that my experience in life can possibly change your experience and maybe make your life better than what you ever thought it could be. So, hey, if you want someone to speak at your event or business or whatever, just reach out to me, get my book, and just make it a great life. Because it's up to you.
And thank you, Tree, because Tree, understand Dr. Taylor's over here trying to work these comment sections. So Tree gave a shout out to Big Dream Hakeem. She put Thomas's stuff up. So Extraordinary Thomas Moon, thank you so much. And then we also put Thomas's links in the discussion tab. So thank you so much for helping me. All right, and then Jeni, where can people find you?
Hey, so as I kind of shared at the beginning, I'm part of Kairos Elite Partnership with Will and I, and we and Bob, we're just really busy. We're actually getting ready to do a marketing relaunch that's really focused on a program called the Career Catalyst Program, and it's for people that are stuck individuals. And as part of that, and as part of being in your roundtable a couple months ago, I mentioned my fatal flaw theory and that I've been teaching for years and years. And I decided, if I've been teaching it and I've been talking about it, it's probably time to write about it. So I'm actually finishing the book within the next 2 weeks. I'm in a book cohort. It's hard. Talk about accountability. But I'm working on getting that finished. So hope that's no, I'm not going to say I hope. Hakeem, I'm not going to say I hope. I will be out there. So the name of the book is Confidently Flawed, using the fatal flaw theory to stop fixing and start thriving. And it's really focused on mind shift and focusing on your gifts that you bring and who you are in your core and creating that confidence in your career and in your life. So that's what I'm working on. And I'm excited that it's finally going to be out there. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And I've had an opportunity to work with you and Will both, and just both fantastic people. So we're excited to see you continue to thrive. Again, shout out to Sarah, because Sarah was my A1 since day one. We did the Drink, Eat, and Intelligent Conversation podcast, which is eventually going to be a book. I got a whole thing around it of getting people involved and engaged in their process. But we did that. We did that and planned it in August of last year, not even knowing what we were getting ourselves into when we launched that this year earlier, right? So we have a lot of great things. And also Sarah is a regular contributor to our weekly magazine. Girl, I don't know why when it's your turn to give a shout out about something, I forget to give you all the props for all the stuff you have been doing. But I guess I work with you so much and talk to you in the chat so much. I'm like, well, that's my homegirl, But Sarah does an amazing job. Again, all of you guys are welcome to contribute to the magazine. And then last but not least, we recently did an awesome interview with Isiah Davis, who's the founder of Transition Inc. So Isiah, tell us about what you got going on, what do you have coming up next, how we can connect.
Yeah, guys, it was an awesome conversation, just spending some time with some awesome professionals and just talking about a sensitive conversation and how we was able to translate it. But you guys could find us on Facebook just to keep up with what we got going on, and maybe we might might have an event in your state soon or town. And also you guys could go to our website. That's where you guys can get a deeper look, and actually you can connect with our services if you would like by submitting a service request. So yeah, that's pretty much the outlets where you guys can reach us. It's been an awesome time speaking with everyone.
Okay, and then so here's Isiah's information. And then before the discussion, we had a great pre-discussion. I don't know if you want to, was that you, Hakeem, that you mentioned that you're coming up in North Carolina to speak, right?
Yeah.
And did you want to give the address or the location to that?
Oh, yeah, I can drop that in there.
Okay.
For sure. Thank you.
All right. And thanks for the folks who helped me out in the comments today, Sarah. I see you posting. Marcel, I still feel so bad because I was trying to get it to pop up on the screen. I accidentally hit the bin. But so Marcel and Tree, thank you for jumping in there to help me out with the conversation. God, this has been fantastic. I know, again, we're not, we're very apolitical here. We really stay focused on trying to build resilient workplaces and communities. This is not activism in the form that it might look, because we bring so many different people to the table. But let me tell you something. You can change the process, but it doesn't change history. It doesn't change the need and necessity for diversity. We're not going to exist in a monolith. And so we as leaders have to be those individuals that are proactive about how we're engaging people what is the intent behind it? Everybody doesn't have a blind process for doing promotions, right? Because most organizations are not like that, right? So how does that look? So you have to be intentional in your HR processes, in your practices about making sure things are fair. So I want to encourage you to look at this thing of DEIA, where these are not dangerous words, right? We're looking at it from the standpoint of how do we foster environments where everybody is truly included, where there are blind processes. I don't care what group you come from, you're not going to prevent sometimes good old boy systems from happening. And that's not based on a sex or color, because sometimes friends promote friends that may not even be deserving of processes. So we have to look at, like, how are we building processes in our organizations so that we can make sure that people are included, are part of that conversation. To Thomas' point, like, you know, when we talk about engagement and disability, how do we move people along as part of that conversation, so that when we're thinking systematically as a leader about how we're going to build this sense of community in our organization, that we're thinking about all of the aspects, but also all of the pushbacks. So what decategorization process do I need to use to make sure that I'm building out, I'm laying the groundwork for structure and expectations in my organization and the team that I'm building, but also that I'm making sure that we include, everybody's included in this process, and there's not, you know, a single person that is left feeling like that they're not part of this community or environment. And sometimes it's those very issues that the things that you don't think that we have to focus on talking about, or those little issues where people just sharing your story, as Hakeem pointed out, just sharing your story helps to build connection. And also Hakeem pointed out a couple things, right? And it starts with you as a leader, how you take care of yourself, how you embrace yourself. I don't have a definition for you of what self-care looks like for you. Okay. So Hakeem has his definition and he has his 12-step process, but you might have a different definition for you. But to his point, you have to start with you as a leader, right? What makes you tick? Because that energy is going to flow out. And to Sarah's point of, you know, embracing this ideology of gratitude and showing appreciation. See, if we truly treated everybody the same, truly, if there was a sense of equity and buy-in within our culture, then we wouldn't need any of these discussions, right? But clearly we're not there yet, but we're on the road to getting there by setting a foundation for it. Guys, this has been a fantastic discussion today. Thank you for all of the panelists who have come in, contributed to our conversation. We wish you the best. This is our last discussion for 2025. And if you have not had an opportunity to go back and listen to the replays for building these resilient workplaces and environments, I encourage you to do so. They're on our website. They're on our channel at Work Solutions LLC. And so Godspeed and have a great rest of the year. Be on the lookout for season 2 of the Work Solutions podcast and our upcoming round 2 of DEI conversations. Have a great year. We'll see you next summer. All right,
Choose
everybody.
yourself.
Bye.
All right. Bye. 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 Okay.